Watch out for Paige if you're brand new to us. We've got a big one in case you heard here in the AFC. Big one between the Bills and the Bengals. We're going to get to that. But thank you, first and foremost, for being with us. Again, if this is your first day or you've been here since day one, doesn't matter. We love you all the same. Although, to be fair, if you've been here since day one, it's like your first child. You love her, him, a little more, right? Just you love your first child. You love them a little more, right? Come on in. Thumbs up, subscribe. I'm going to turn money into more money. How can I do that? On DraftKings. What? I'm going to turn more money into even more money. How am I going to do that? With the NBA Bet Pro tool. All right. All of that aside, let's begin and start the clock. The first play for us is over. Now we're over 49.5 here. This is a key number at 51. So getting over anything below in that realm, of course. I mean, if it's 42, then who cares about 51? Then we talk about 41. But in this case, it's 51. That's all we care about. It's close to that, 1.5 points off that. We're on the right side of going over in order to get to 51. Good example was the Bears and Lions game on Sunday. A lot of points scored on one side. Barely got to, but ended at 51. That total closed, I think, at like 52, 53, what have you. So 51 is the number you need to get to. If you're below that, a really good shot here with both teams needing this win. With both teams looking at this as a situation where their offenses are going to dictate a lot. So first play is just banking on both quarterbacks throwing, both quarterbacks moving the ball, both offenses getting in the end zone. Now, somebody's got to win this sucker, right? What the hell does 1.5 do for you? Not much. I understand that. Not much. But in this case, when you're looking at just winning here at home, there's no true home field advantage that's been given to the Bengals, or it's been mitigated by something else for them to sit right now at even money. But let's be fair, the Bills are definitely charged right now. And while the Chiefs are up top, you've got the next two teams in the top three in conference. I like the Bengals in this case, in this game, better than the Bills. Just 1 to 2 plays better. Can trust their run game more. Now you've got multiple guys you can go to as opposed to just kind of holding your breath. No knock on Singletary. It's just not the same what you have with Mixon and Pirine. You've got the offense. It's just a better version built. Now the defense is a different story. We'll get to that. How about the first half here? We're talking about going over 49.5. I think there's a pretty good chance that the Bengals hit their team total in the first half. So this is on team props, and you go down to the first half, Cincinnati Bengals over 11.5 points in the first half. So looking at this earlier, it was at 12.5. This is dipping. I like it at 11.5. I don't know how much lower it's going to go, but 11.5 is a good number for a Bengals team who should be at 3 scoring clips. All right, so I'm going to give you 3 scoring drives in the first half. 2 of those ideally would be touchdowns and a field goal, but even 2 field goals.
Strategy,
right? Like, and you know, I think especially in best ball, I think we're still getting our metrics correct, right? Like advance rate and all that stuff. Like it helps. You think your advance rate on those teams probably looked sick, but then the reality is, you know,
that little more spread.
Yeah.
You draft what, Mike? Oh yeah. Oh.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Stokastic Monday Night Football No House Advantage Strategy Show. I am not Eitan Shander, believe it or not. I'm at Savoca. What's going on, guys? At Draftaholic on Twitter. But we have a unbelievable Monday Night Football to close things out here for the 2022-2023 season now. And here to break it down with me is Geoff Ulrich. Follow him at The Fantasy Grind. What's up, man? You excited for this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely like a primetime game where you don't have to be like shameful to be excited for it. I mean, potentially the two best teams in football. I mean, you can make that argument, or at least two of the top five teams for sure. Love Joe Burrow as a player, so never sad to watch him play football. And obviously Josh Allen, super exciting. So yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, well, it could be a letdown, but I mean, this is going to be a good game, really, regardless of how it plays out, just because, we got two of the best quarterbacks in the game. So,
yeah, absolutely. And look, I think some people still have some shock, even though they made it all the way to the Super Bowl last year, when you say the Cincinnati Bengals once again are one of the best teams in football. But I couldn't agree more. They haven't lost since week 9. They've lost once since week 6, twice since week 3. And they're 11-4. They have a chance to close out the division tonight. Let's dig right into this one, even before we go into the No House Advantage slate, which, by the way, the No House Advantage lineup today, absolutely excellent. The contest on the pickup game, as well as the versus the house, some really enticing opportunities for us. But look, we got a 50.5 point total, which I think is a little low. Talk to me about what you think the game environment is going to be like. You think this is going to be a pass-heavy, points-heavy game script?
So, I mean, look, there's a lot of ways this can break out. I mean, there's no doubt that this could go the way you're thinking, and this ends up just being such a low total. I do think the Bengals are going to try and slow this game down a little bit. You look at what the Bengals do at home, and this has been a tendency under Zach Taylor that they do try and run the ball a little bit more at home and just control things with Joe Mixon. And, he's averaging 90 yards rushing per game. They're averaging like 30 rush attempts. I mean, part of me says that's just, okay, they're the home team and they're favored more. So of course they rush the ball more at home. But I feel like there's this conscious effort sometimes by them to actually do that when they're at home. So I think you're going to see the Bengals come out and really, try to establish the run sort of thing. So, and I think it might work because the Bills, what you want to stay away from is their secondary. So, Mixon is a player I'm kind of bullish on tonight, whether it's for props or for showdown purposes. And again, just because Mixon has a good rushing game doesn't mean the game is going to be low scoring necessarily. The Bills can score in like 3 plays. So, yeah, exactly. Right. So that's just one way I'm looking at the Bengals to come out of this game. Whether it works off the top or not is another story. I actually think that if it doesn't work out, you may even have more of a chance of a lower scoring game, because that just means the Bills defense may be dominating. And then, it's like 24-10 or something. And it just kind of, they run it out. But I'm looking for the Bengals to try and control this game with the run early, and then we'll see what happens from there.
That definitely makes sense to me. And, I'm still kind of iffy on whether the Bills have made it all the way back to that elite status as defensively, I should say. Offensively, no question about it. But I think you may have a point here. They're going to try to run at home, especially. Still, we're talking about a Bengals team who is 6th in the NFL in pass plays per game, and they're going up against a run defense on Buffalo who has finally pulled together according to the stats. They're now up to 3rd in Football Outsiders DVOA against the rush, 7th against the pass, so it's not like that secondary is truly faltering, but they are 12th in yards per carry. There has been some efficiency there. And then if we're looking, at the No House Advantage offerings, we don't have the ability to bet on P. Ryan, but we do have Mixon. So we'll get into him specifically. That might be one area where, we might have some interesting overs, whereas the passing game is obviously a place where people are going to be excited to go. Crazy that we have no concerns about weather or cold at all this time of year. 56 and 5 mile per hour winds, just absolutely no concerns. And what's really nice is both teams have things to play for. So in terms of rest or anything like that, we should basically be completely off the hook. No worries at all.
Yeah, no injuries, really. I know, like, you really couldn't ask for a better setup here. So, full complement of receivers on both sides. Even getting Hayden Hurst back, I think is actually kind of an interesting thing to take note of as well. And I think Hayden Hurst actually works into like a couple plays as well. Like, I know one of the higher up plays, we actually have unders for receptions on both of the Bengals receivers here trending as pretty high plays in the projections, like 66th percentile, 65th percentile-ish kind of. And I mean, I'm looking at Chase and Higgins, and I mean, maybe it's just like simplistic, but I mean, Chase is a guy I would feel fine leaving out, or maybe even taking like a contrarian stance and going over on. But I do like the fade on Higgins here. I think if anyone gets his target share eaten into a little bit, it's probably T. I think Jamar Chase is just such a tough cover that, you know, even if they put Tre'Davious White on him or whatever, I mean, the Bengals are going to throw to him if they're behind, or if it's a game-changing situation kind of thing. So I definitely look at the Higgins under as probably a little bit more enticing for me.
I think that makes a whole lot of sense. And look, these are the types of players in Jamar Chase where you need more than one person in your secondary to be able to cover them. And this is an NBA term we often use, gravity. There's an amount that Jamar Chase will pull away, leaving opportunities for not just Higgins, but Hurst and also Boyd as well. I think it's a fantastic matchup, and I'm really excited to see if the Bengals can actually be as explosive as we expect them to be on a game-in, game-out basis against this secondary. Now, the Bengals defense, you know, they're nothing to slop at either. 14th in Football Outsiders rush DVOA and pass DVOA. They're 10th best in the NFL in yards allowed per carry. This was an area where they were really kind of deficient. No longer, if you can make one more argument towards the under for this 50.5 total, it would be that the Bengals defense might actually be able to slow down an obviously explosive Bills team.
Yeah, absolutely. The Bengals are just a really well-coached team. I think that's what most people, they haven't quite wrapped their heads around yet. Like they run some of the most complex like cover schemes and stuff like that in the secondary. And they make up for their lack of talent. Like, again, I think a lot of people forgot they lost their best corner. Like, I think it was like week 5 in Chidobe Awuzie. And they've gone on this run without him, which I really thought that was going to hurt them. I thought they would have trouble, keep like just containing teams. They do allow quite a bit of receptions and yards on the outside, but they're pretty good around the red zone. Again, like really scheme it up really well. I think this is still a good spot for Stephon Diggs. I do. Like, I don't think that the Bengals have a corner that's really going to truly be able to keep up with them or anything like that. And, again, like I'm kind of in line with the projections here. We don't have Diggs projected as like a huge over or anything, but at 5.5 receptions, I think you're kind of buying the bottom here. I mean, we've seen Diggs with like 6.5 reception totals, 7.5, I'm pretty sure, on No House at one point in the year. I don't mind taking an over in a game like this. Like you said, close point spread, 50.5 now on the total, no win concerns. It's a very good chance the Bengals are up at some point in this game and Diggs just gets fired on here. So I like that one quite a bit as well. Like that one kind of flows with my mix and over. So always obviously trying to correlate these things when you're trying to make a lineup on No House. But I look at this as a pretty good matchup for Diggs to at least put up some volume.
Let's dig into this. Why don't we? Let's go player by player, because over on the No House Advantage side, it's really, we got a lot of offerings. And also Stokastic has a great offer for you when it comes to No House Advantage. We now have a $100 first match deposit bonus. They are the sponsor of the show, and they have multiple ways to play over there now, which, they've had these pick'em contests for a while now where you use the same stats. And of course, we've got tools over at Stokastic to help you take down huge prizes. Same stats you know and love, and you rank them in order of confidence in order to create unique lineups. But now they have the versus the house mode where you can get up to 20x your entry fee, and not just NFL, guys. We've got strategy shows and to help you take down these other sports as well: NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, NASCAR. Sign up now in the link with the video in the video description below, and you'll get $100 up to $100. Can't speak. First match deposit bonus. All right, let's dig into the quarterback position. Two really good ones. We can start with Allen, just because he has honestly pretty decent yardage lines. 260.5 was the first one, and 1.5 touchdowns. Where I was like, that feels like an easy over. What are you thinking for Josh Allen? Is there a specific prop that's really sticking out to you today for him?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, interesting that our projections do have him a little bit lower here. And like projecting more towards the underside, but I kind of am in agreement with you here. I mean, if you're taking the under on Allen, you're basically you're basically kind of playing that the Bills defense is going to be dominant at some point. The Bills are going to get up, and Allen's probably going to be running a little bit and just not passing that heavy in the second half. Because if this turns into any kind of shootout, I mean, again, like I feel like he could just fly past this. So it's a really interesting angle. I think like, and I guess the nice thing about having all our options here and everyone's healthy is that if you're going to play one over on the other side, like it's pretty easy to correlate on the other vein. So again, you like the Mixon over, he's going to be effective, get some yards. I think going over on the Josh Allen passing yards on the other side is probably where you'd want to play it. Mixon being effective to me screams the Bengals have scored. The Bengals are controlling the game a bit, and they've forced Josh Allen into a bit of a hurry up mode at the end of the game. So I'm kind of looking at scenarios like that, but yeah, it's an interesting line. The 1.5 passing touchdowns, kind of similar. We do have that projected as an over actually, at just, a slight over. It's not the strongest play, but I definitely like the over on both of those. And I think playing them together makes some sense. So a lot of different ways Josh Allen can get there, as we all know. He's got some winnable matchups on the board. Dawson Knox is a player who's come on for him recently in the red zone. So I think that if I was going to go over on one, it would be the passing touchdowns, but there's definitely scenarios here where you can play both.
That's the one I was looking at as well. Also, over 0.5 interceptions, he could still have a strong game, but throw one interception. That seems pretty reasonable to me. And one thing to the yardage standpoint as well, 2 out of the last 7 games, that's his rate over those 7, that he's actually gone over this 260.5 line. But when he's gone over that by at least 40 yards, 45, almost 45 yards. So he might blow past it, or the percentages say he might be just under it. What were you gonna add?
And he was dealing with some elbow issues like in that stretch too. It seems like he's gotten a little bit healthier with that. So a little bit less of a concern there. Here's my question for you, Matt. Who would you rather take the interception prop on today, Allen or Burrow? I think I would go Allen, but
I think so too.
Yeah.
And I think our tools, if I'm not mistaken, are pointing us in that direction as well. I think both of them are pretty fair overs, to be honest. And that's not to say anything about their ceiling potential here. Like, you could take overs on their interceptions and on their yardage for either player here. And that's really speaking to the strength of both teams' defenses. And remember, guys, that just because players are throwing interceptions, it does not decrease the shootout potential of games, because they often, even if they throw a pick six, they're getting that ball right back.
Oh, you want them to throw a pick six. Absolutely. Get the ball back, be down a score. So yeah, no, the interception definitely can play with the over on the passing yards. Yep.
Yeah. And Burrow, he has a more interesting yardage prop line. The passing touchdown one is the first one I want to talk about, though, because that's at 2.5, whereas Allen sits at 1.5.
Yeah.
3 touchdowns is hard to expect from a player. Obviously, we know Burrow can do it, but betting on it as a high confidence pick in these pick'em contests feels like something that not a lot of people are going to have the guts to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I think with most quarterbacks, who would have a 2.5 projected line, I'd come on here and just say, just take the under. Don't worry about it. It's probably not going to hit. We have a projected high for a reason, but again, we got the Bengals here just winning games outright. Joey Burrow playing out of his mind. I don't even care who the defense is here. He's got all his weapons. If you want to make a contrarian lineup with Burrow going over passing touchdowns, go for it, man. And most people are going to look at this line and take the under. And it's going to be one of the most heavily owned props. You don't even really need our projections to tell you that, 2.5 passing touchdowns. Most of the time, most quarterbacks aren't going to hit it. Like, it's just the under is the big favorite. So, but that's going to lead to high ownership. And again, like, we're talking the pick'em contest, it's DFS, it's strategy, there's leverage you can get. And, you could correlate, like, you could even, maybe you take the under on the Joe Mixon rush yards and you play for, Joe Burrow is the one who's passing like 50 times in this game. So there's a lot of different angles you can play with it. I wish we could, we don't have touchdown props to pair with it. So, but some of these things do correlate at least loosely with the Burrow over on the passing touchdowns. But I think this style of game that we're getting, again, everyone healthy, there's no big disadvantage on one side, close point spread. I think you can I don't want to say you can do whatever you want, but you can make a lot of different style lineups here, and you don't necessarily have to like write any option off the board. So
totally agree here. At one area I will say I have a pretty confident play with these quarterbacks. If you are playing the versus the house mode, Burrow's passing yards prop line in the versus the house mode is all the way up to 294.5. And in our tools over at Stokastic.com, we have the under 277.5 yards as one of our higher EV plays. Happens more than 50% of the time. So that's a pretty easy under for us if you want to add one to the versus the house contest today. We move on to the wide receiver. Yeah, it's a pretty simple one mathematically. But still, like you said, there's true 300-yard potential there. Like, we're not going to scoff at you if you say, I'm betting the over there because I believe in Burrow. Like, it's not insanity at all. Absolutely. We got to move to the wide receiver and tight end position here because we have a ton of options. For the Buffalo side, the obvious Stephon Diggs, 47.5 yards, 5.5 receptions honestly seems pretty reasonable. I think we should just go with all this whole player pool here because we have two great receivers in Diggs and Chase, and then a 1B in Higgins. And then we've got like 5 or 6 options that we need to suss out here. Are there any top options? We kind of talked about Chase a little bit. Diggs or Chase or even Higgins that really stick out to you with interesting props today?
Yeah. So for me, I talked a little bit about the Bengals guys already, obviously. I mean, we have them projected more as overs. It's big reception props for both of them. I think Hurst being back probably eats into Higgins a little bit. I do kind of like the under on T. Higgins. He's, people like to call them 1A, 1B, but, Jamar Chase is really his target share over the last 3 games has been pretty insane. It's been right up there, in close to the Cooper Kupp territory. So to me, he's been coming on a little bit. Higgins has dealt with a little bit of injury issues this year. He seems pretty much healthy for this game, but it's always a little bit of something. And then just, again, the Hurst factor and Boyd being in there as well. I mean, Tyler Boyd is a supremely underrated receiver. I know he doesn't get used a lot like every game for the Bengals, but if this did turn into kind of a back and forth game, like, there's scenarios where Tyler Boyd, out produces T. Higgins just because of the matchup. So I think Higgins is a good fade candidate on the receptions. Hurst is interesting. I don't like trusting players coming back from injuries, but at 2.5 receptions, he's definitely like a solid part of the passing game. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be in there. For me, it would be more of a lower point play to put in like a Hayden Hurst. Again, just rolling with the projections here. 3 receptions, pretty fair. Maybe you play it with the T. Higgins under as well, playing one off the other. I think those correlate a little bit at least. So that's how I'm kind of looking at the Bengals receivers. Again, probably just staying away from Jamar Chase or even maybe playing like a contrarian angle is fine with me. But just because I just got so much respect for how he's playing right now. But I mean, yeah, it's again, we have Boyd in there who can kind of pop off at any time and Hurst back now. So a lot of different combos you can play here with the Bengals side. You could even look to take unders on all these guys, to be honest, if you want a real contrarian angle and go over on Mixon. It's not out of the realm of possibility here that the Bengals control this a little bit with the run game. They make a few stops and all of a sudden, like it just comes down to one possession at the end. And none of these guys have more than like 4 or 5 catches and Chase has like 5 catches. It is an outcome. It's going to be a low play one as well. But if you're making a bunch of lineups, I would consider something like that.
Yeah, especially if you're building, for a narrative like you're talking about here, maybe one that gets close to the implied total, but actually stays under. This is what our tools are saying, is that all of these lofty ideas about the shootout potential of this game, and if you're in the best ball streets hoping for, big fantasy scores, you guys want that. But that does kind of push the expectations for all of these players a little higher than the math says they should be necessarily. We all know. The big caveat is they can all absolutely pop off. But if you're looking at just our lines that happen more than 50% of the time, some of the very best options are the under on receptions for Chase, for Higgins. We're okay on Hurst, but even Boyd under 3.5 receptions looks like it happens more than 60% of the time in our latest run of simulations. I do think that there's the opportunity still to get contrarian and get interesting, get weird with an Isaiah McKenzie type who only needs 3 receptions to hit an over or 33 yards. I think Dawson Knox, who you mentioned earlier, is a player we could also look to if we wanted to find a contrarian over Again, I think that if I had to choose one, I would say the over 2.5 receptions, but I don't hate 35.5 yards either. If I had to pick one of the two, it would be the catches number.
Yeah, Dawson Knox is interesting. And it's, the Bengals were actually just one of the worst teams against guarding against tight ends last year. They kind of improved in that area, but Knox is trending in the right direction. I mean, he's gone over that prop quite easily in each of his last 3 games. So like I said, I expect the target share to kind of drift back in Diggs' territory, but there's still lots of scenarios here where Knox can hit an over, just through red zone usage, or, I mean, look, we're talking about 3 catches here. So, always trying to create a narrative when you're building the lineup. Maybe you're going over on the Allen yardage, and you throw Dawson Knox in as a low point play on the bottom. The 2.5 receptions, I completely agree. That's the better target for me if you're going to do that. If you're going to take the overside, I think that Knox, could end up with like 4 or 5 catches, but a lot of those catches could just be like 5-yarders or just around the end zone, which would limit his upside in the yardage department. So McKenzie also interesting there. That's more of a player who could just break one for you, right? So, break out that 30-yarder and all of a sudden you get there on 1 or 2 catches. So both those guys, I think what I'd call solid low point plays. I think when you have so many options here with higher usage players, that's the one thing I'd say, you don't need to get crazy with like the Dawson Knoxes and the McKenzies. Like, don't put them too high up, because these are players who, they're harder to project. We're not in the minds of the coach. They're the 3rd or 4th option for a reason. It's kind of the same with Tyler Boyd. Good players, but not necessarily the easiest to predict. So we got Knox for the over on the receptions. That's probably my favorite of the ones we've talked about there. But they're all viable and all can be fit in with like a certain kind of narrative. So, which is nice.
And absolutely. And the reason we talk about these narratives is because we want to make sure that we talk about players not definitively about what will happen, but what could happen, a range of outcomes. And so what we've done at Stokastic is not only created tools to help you win at No House Advantage. If you go to our projections page, you'll see interesting columns like sim win percentage, which shows you the percentage of the times we run these games over and over and over again, the percentage of the times these players actually hit the over and the under on these bets. And it really isn't a better time to get into the action, not just for No House Advantage, because right next to it, you can get those same projections for the big platforms that DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo, and you've got access now to the lineup generator tool when you sign up over at Stokastic, the perfect tool for building winning lineups in DFS. Cutting-edge algorithms are analyzing, simulating, and creating brand new lineups. They now have player swap features available for you. So, talk about being platform specific with your tools. It's the same stats and projections, but we're able to help you win huge prizes at No House Advantage and elsewhere. Get into the action today. All right, let's talk about these running backs. We'll start with Mixon, because it seems like this is where the foundation almost of your narrative that you might be building off today, Geoff. Mixon's at 50.5 on the pick'em contest. That seems reasonable. He needs about, based on our projected stats, he'd need about 3.5 yards per carry. That's very doable. Yeah.
And, there's a couple things that go into this. I just think that the Bengals, again, what I describe as like a pretty smart team at this point. They know who they're going up against. They want to protect Joe Burrow. They also want to keep Josh Allen off the field. And I think they're going to stick with the run game here, even if they get down a little bit. We've seen them do that in the past. So I do like this Mixon over. We have it projected as a fairly solid over. We're talking like a 5-yard cushion here. I mentioned like Mixon at the home splits really in his favor, averaging like 90 yards at home this year. Again, there's a lot of things that go into that, but I do like this one. I think it's a nice one. Again, if I was making like a single entry lineup tonight, I had one bullet. I would start with the Joe Mixon over. And I think that starting with that, like you said, there's so many branches that you can kind of think off that, okay, do I maybe even take a Joe Burrow under on the yardage off that? Or do I just go right to the Josh Allen over on the other side? I think that T Higgins under works off that as well. The reception prop we've liked. So I'm more bullish on Mixon for sure. And I think the other side of this game is kind of interesting with Singletary too. I think you already talked about this, but like the Bengals, rush defense really solid lately. I don't think they're going to give up a ton of yards to Singletary, and Singletary has James Cook in the backfield to work with. So completely different scenario. A player can get his touches eaten into a little bit if the other guy gets going. That one probably works off a Mixon over as well, just taking the under on Singletary.
I could not agree more. I mean, I didn't come here to just agree with you, Geoff, but honestly, one of the things I do when I look at the projected stats when they come out for these games at Stokastic is I create a chart called sludge yards chart, where I just give every single running back exactly 3 yards per carry, multiply it by the amount of projected rushes, and just gives me an idea of what kind of efficiency players will need to hit their over. And first of all, Devin Singletary, based on our amount of rushes, will need to be incredibly efficient because he comes up well short of that 44.5 line that No House Advantage has him at, not just because of James Cook, but because of just the variance in the rushing game for the Bills. Because remember, Josh Allen's going to run a ton as well. With Mixon in this sludge yards chart, what name in progress right now, but he just
I like it.
at 3 yards per carry, based on our projected stats, that would put him at nearly 43 yards, meaning he just needs to rip off one good run, or, he could be efficient all game. That would be nice. And you're getting very, very close to that 50.5 line. So I'm not all the way up there with a top confidence there for Joe Mixon, but I think he deserves a spot in the middle of the pack for that over with Joe Mixon. Look, I think the over on Devin Singletary 44.5 might be one of the most contrarian plays we have available to us today. So if you can find a way that works for you, that's pretty off the board. That's all I'll say there, because the under is a pretty easy bet for me.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if you're playing it, and that's probably like the one where that's like the one prop on the board I'd have trouble getting to as well. But if you are going to play it, I mean, you're probably thinking that you pair it with a Josh Allen under. Maybe a Joe Burrow over, thinking the Bills are controlling this game. Maybe they pick off Burrow and Singletary's getting a couple extra carries. So still works in a lot of the same ways that the rushing total for Mixon does. But it's just such a different scenario. Like you said, if the Bengals are running a lot in this game, it's pretty much going to be all Mixon. The Bills are running a lot in this game. Not even be that much Singletary. The Bills could rush 30 times in this game and Singletary could get 8 carries, and it really wouldn't be that shocking. So, yeah, completely different scenarios for both lead RBs.
Absolutely. And we are at just 1 minute until we got to close this one out. So I'm going to ask you rapid fire. If you had one prop, one thing to put at the very top of your board to start people off with a great winning lineup today for this Monday Night Football game, what would be that prop?
I mean, I think, I'm going to go again. I'm not going to go against the projection. I'm just going to go a little bit below the projection. And I'm going to go with my T. Higgins call at under 4.5 receptions. Again, a lot of respect for this Bills secondary. I think that there's other options out there where Boyd, Hurst, they could get going if the Bengals really need to pass the ball a ton. So I'm going to say T. Higgins, top 2 play for me, under 5.5 receptions.
Perfect. And then Singletary under 44.5 rushing yards is going to be the one that I have the most confidence in today. That's going to do it. Make sure to follow Geoff on the Twitters at The Fantasy Grind. You can follow me at Draftaholic as well if you like. And of course, thank you to producer Mike Lawrence behind the virtual glass. Follow him at Awesome Yo. We've got the No House Advantage NBA show right after this one, and then the NBA Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock starting at 5 p.m. I'll be back with the Showdown Shaman at 7:15, taking you up to this very matchup. For Geoff and Mike, I'm Matt Savoca. Let's win some money on NHA.